Hey everybody, and welcome to tonight's LightNet Hangout. We're here tonight with Carl the Crusher, and I'm so excited to have him tonight. Why? Because he embodies everything about our time. He's gotten so interested in the mysteries of life and the phenomenons and electromagnetic fields and getting out from behind his TV and taking his truck out and measuring stuff and asking questions and sharing those stories on YouTube. So he's such an incredible embodiment of what it means to be curious, to follow your curiosity, and to really put together. We don't really know what's going on with all this stuff, but if we're going to figure out, it's going to be with people like Carl, who are just out there in the field testing things, talking to people, and so I'm really excited to have you, Carl. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's awesome to be here and to join everybody in the chat and talk about it. It's cool to be in the same vibe and energy, and feels safe to discuss it with like-minded people.
Yeah, totally. So, by the way, if you're watching on New Realities and Portal to Ascension or Carl's channel or LightNet, we invite you to come into this actual Zoom room. This is going to allow you to ask questions in the chat, participate in the question and answer that we're going to do. And then it also allows you to do these breakout groups. So we're going to put you in breakout groups of 4. If you so choose, you can. And just like you said, it's nice to have like-minded people you can talk to openly. So I really want to start out running here with the biggest questions, because if anybody knows me, I don't like to just glaze over stuff. I like to hit the big questions, the elephant in the room. And one of my biggest questions when I study your work is that I wonder, okay, so one of the things you're doing is you've been discovering these petroglyphs, these ancient drawings. And a lot of people are seeing drawings that they think might be that these ancients, Native Americans and others had direct contact with star nations. So I want to ask you what your sense is about that. Did they, were they more in contact than we are now? Or are they in the same amount of contact, or what? And then one of my other theories that is just totally crazy is that maybe because so many people the collective consciousness are requesting a galactic narrative, that we're actually writing this stuff into the past right now. So all these ancient alien stuff is appearing at the same time. Now, who knows about that theory? But anyway, what do you think is going on?
That's part of the core of the big mystery that I'm really fascinated with, that has me kind of all hooked on this, trying to chase it down and get out hiking and exploring all of it. I think it's a combination of things. It comes from a core sort of meditation belief system that I have, that comes from a book called the Kabbalion and other ancient esoteric books, that whole aspect of as so above, so below, which is also as so without, so within. And you can look at it in a million different perspectives and angles. And so when you look at it, everything that we're doing, from computer systems to microchips, all the way up to the way that we design cities, to the way that solar systems function, all the way up, it's kind of like this strange scalable fractal thing. And when you look at it, from the atomic structure all the way up to a solar system, to the way the whole universe functions, it's kind of like that. So when I look at these ancient petroglyphs, I look at it like a primitive attempt at circuitry or communication, or we call it, for example, in other terminology, you might call it channeling. Well, when you think about that word channeling, if you're trying to channel voices or communication from another dimension or another realm or from somewhere else, think of it like changing the channel on a radio or on the television to pick up a different signal. And in the same way, we have this pattern throughout time where people were creating magic glyphs or symbols or hieroglyphs, or trying to create certain forms of communication between themselves and physical reality, to either transfer power into or from that reality or to communicate with it in a certain way. And so when you think about it, we're still doing the same thing with like computer chips and microchips, and the way we structure our cities and put up our cell phone towers. And so I kind of looked at it like that. Maybe they were meditating and using these carvings to try and communicate or tap into their spiritual belief systems, or they had some kind of a primitive sort of amplification system for telepathy or their spiritual practices. And I think the residue of that still remains, and you can pick it up when you go and sit in these locations and study them out.
Oh, wow. So we got to unpack that, because you dropped a lot of stuff that I'm like, wait a minute, I'm gonna wait. So you're saying that you think that they weren't just like drawing pictures like, wow, this happened. Because I mean, I've seen the pictures that, Keenan has shown, and it's literally looks like a ship where people are coming out. You know what I mean? It's like, I would draw that. If that happened, you know what I mean? Like, I would want to draw it out, right? But you're saying you're also calling in that we're basically creating our reality, and we can use symbols in order to do that.
Yes. And in the same way that you would use a certain magical symbol and magical words to try and manifest something through perspective of like witchcraft or something like that, casting a spell or whatever, you have the same sort of pattern throughout every different method, where you have people basically creating geometry or sacred geometry or glyphs or drawings, trying to communicate with the power of reality and to transform it, either to manifest or to tap into that energy there. And in a way that I think that the primitive people were doing that, and whether it just taps into your own subconscious awakening in the way that like seeing those symbols evokes something within yourself, and then that in turn can create a sense of manifestation. For example, like if you're living in the valley and you're an ancient primitive hunter and you're praying or trying to do a ritual to go find food, you may carve a symbol of antelope on the rock and do rituals trying to manifest that. And then you go out and do the hunt, and sure enough, there's antelope or whatever. And so it all fits in with your belief. But it gets really strange when you realize that these petroglyphs very rarely depict normal daily life. They're always supernatural depictions of entities and what look like portals and all kinds of different stuff. And so that made me think that maybe the symbols themselves aren't really depictions of normal daily life, but trying to just tap into the natural energy of the earth or reality itself. And so I started trying to test it through meditation, different meditation methods, and then taking equipment up like tri-field meters and different ghost hunting equipment and all kinds of stuff to see if I could actually prove it. And sure enough, there's kind of patterns to it that are very interesting, and I'm still trying to figure out.
Wow. So I always think, so what you're talking about is saying that if you want to manifest something in your reality, like love or money or an opportunity or a deer, an antelope, right, to eat something, that, ancient practices has taken a symbol of that, and you use that to focus your meditation or whatever. I always thought that was like hocus pocus, meaning that's my term for make yourself, if you need some ritual to believe, to change your belief that an antelope is going to walk across the plain, then do all the hocus pocus, do all the ritual things so that you can really believe whatever. But then I'm starting to wonder, because all of the things, we're collectively creating a language with God, in a sense, to define what has meaning for us as a group. And so we were doing the rice experiment, Emoto's rice experiment, and we were yelling, I hate you and I love you, and one would rot and one would not. But then we also started doing it where we just label it. We just said hate, love. And someone was saying that before, you can do that with the seed, just write hate, love on it, and the seed, water them the same, do the same, and one grows and one doesn't. So maybe you're right, but are you saying that you use the symbols to call in craft yourself?
Yeah, it's like sort of like hacking the matrix in a way, sort of like reaching out to the subcode, because really what you're doing is you're kind of like looking in the mirror and tricking your own subconscious to rewrite the coding of the matrix. And if you can sort of do that as a collective or as a community or as a village of people together, then you kind of sort of shape reality into a new level, you know what I mean, or raise it to another dimension. So the idea is that ancient people were naturally doing that in the same way that animals would migrate, or in a herd, or a homing pigeon knows the way home. That ancient people that weren't all overwhelmed with modern society and things were just tapped into the energy of Mother Nature and into that sensation of their own intuition and their subconscious, and following it in the same way. And that's evident in the early depictions of their artwork and their interactions with it. And I think that's coming full circle in the fact that we see that in our modern research into this and experimentation into this and spiritual work with this, where people are learning that through meditation and manifestation and all of that, through the collective, our own consciousness is interacting and sort of procedurally generating our own reality as we go, in a way. And we might have a lot of different terminology for that, but that's sort of what's going on. And we need to face it, that reality as we know it is a lot stranger than we think. It's more like an interactive lucid dream or a virtual reality that we all share. And we have a lot of different names for it. But I think ancient people were tapped into that a little bit more naturally, just because they were in tune with their environment. And we've lost touch with that, and it's starting to come back, I think.
I think trying to figure
Wow,
out what
I'm so excited about this interview. Talk about addressing the elephant in the room. Oh my word. Okay, so this is really exciting, Carl. I'm so glad we're going to have this discussion today. And, you know, that's the thing. If we're going to co-hallucinate, create, and live in this world together, this is why we have got to be so healed and so careful, because we're walking around with magic wand, you know what I mean, of what we're creating. And that's why I'm very resistant toward, you know, paranoid, negative narratives, because like we really create that if that's what we want. And someone once told me, they're like a healer, they were like, yeah, you know, we'd love to take credit for all the cool things we manifest. You know, it's like, oh, I made that happen. And then we want to walk away from all the stuff that we did that was not good. You know, it's like, yeah, oh, well, it's like, well, you manifested that too. Like, yeah. Oh, no.
We want to judge it all. Yeah. We want to name it and label it and judge it all. Yeah.
No, not right now. Yeah. So wow, that's really cool. So I want to take a little break before we dive into, again, I want to talk about how you think we should bring in this new galactic narrative. And I want to also ask you, how do you think the ancients, like what experiences did they have? You know, were they having next level stuff more than we are now? So that's great. But hold on one second.
You want to take our break first, right?
We're going to pause and expand literally. So I just wanted to introduce Jennifer from Pause and Expand. She's going to be joining us in 2 weeks for her workshop. And I would just want to, before I do that, I just want to tell you a little bit about how things work here. So the first thing I want to say is that I do believe that Carl is right, that we create, we like, if you get, it's one thing to sit there alone in the cave and manifest something. And it's a whole nother thing to manifest things together. And we've realized that with spoon bending. And we've also realized it with CE5. So looking for ETs in the sky. I'm going to share, if you're not in the chat, I mean, if you're not in the Zoom room, please do that. Come in by going to lightnet.org Hangout. It's going to give you the Zoom information right there and then. And I'm also going to share right now this link into the chat where you guys can find other groups that are once a month at the new moon. we do this map for people where so this is the people that are getting together to do a CE5 to look for light ships, and you can go in and it tells you how to get in touch with that person to do it, right? And I'm also going to share, we'll put these in the show notes if you're just watching, but you just fill out a form every month and you say it's part of ET Let's Talk, and you say I'm going to do that. Like I said, we do these spoon bending parties. It's the same principle. You get a bunch of people together and people are bending spoons with their minds. They're bending spoons together. We're getting absolutely crazy results. Jen, who's here with us now, also did that. But so every fourth Thursday, we do a workshop, and the next workshop is going to be the science of sound to harness our intuition. So Jen has created this absolutely incredible company called Pause and Expand that has revolutionized sound baths over Zoom, where you can put on your headset and all of a sudden you're in this. And they've gotten Uber and Adobe and CVS. They've had such incredible success. So tell us a little bit about what you're going to do in 2 weeks with us. I'm so excited.
I just want to say, I feel like Zenka should be the spokesperson for all of us in our entire lives, because she is the best cheerleader I think I've ever met in my entire life. It's amazing to be here. This group is amazing. I can just feel the energy radiating all the way into Canada, which is where I am right now. And I'm really passionate about sound healing, and this idea that everything is energy, and this idea that sound is truly the medicine of our future is something that I firmly believe in. And when you have the capacity to drop your brainwaves down to the delta or theta state, which is where we drop you into when you experience a sound bath, you have this incredible ability to harness your intuition. And all of us know that, well, we should know, and we try to remember every day, that all of the answers that we need are inside of us. And what I love about sound healing is it allows us to access that subconscious mind and those beliefs that are programmed in our mind that we're constantly every day trying to remember that all the answers are inside of us. So I'm super excited to take you through this workshop in a few weeks, and you're going to have the opportunity to experience a 360 surround sound bath. So all you need to bring is your headsets. My partner, Steve, who is the other half of Pause and Expand, is a musician and a music producer. So he's actually been able to take the sound and transmit it through your headset so that you can completely experience it as if you were having these tuning forks right in your ears. Wow. So we're really going to be able to tap in. And if there's something that you've been working on where you want to kind of harness your intuition and get those answers, we're going to do that together. And I'm just such a big advocate for the work that Zenka is also doing, because community and just being in groups with other people is where we are all moving. We're all moving in that direction. And so the power of doing it virtually with people from all around the world, it just lights me up inside. So that's what we're going to do next in the next few weeks when we do the workshop.
That's awesome. I can't wait. Your company is just taken off because it's so powerful what you guys are doing. So there's it's $11 to join the workshop. You can also join for the whole year with $25 off with Expand. It's under $100 for a year worth of spoon bending, a year worth of workshops, plus all the archives. So thank you, Jennifer, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
All right, awesome. So yeah, the code there is Expand for the $25 off tonight. So Carl, okay, so like you're blowing my mind. So what you're saying is that we're going to be able to bring these crafts and things in using our generative ability to create reality. So what would you Is that what you're saying? Okay, so talk about your experience and how are we doing? Like, if you're going to give us a grade as,
I think it's like a natural evolution. It's like exactly what Jennifer's doing with Expand and what you guys are doing with the spoon bending and everything, is that retouching into that reality again. The idea of doing the sound baths or whatever is the idea of going internal and inward and reshaping your default mode. You know, we are, from the minute that we're born and raised, we're, you know, it's put in us this certain coding. We're taught a language. And like I was taught English by my parents in school. And so I have this whole reality that immediately my mind attaches labels to. So everything that I see and experience, my mind immediately labels and has a whole dialogue and internal dialogue. And the idea of doing sound bath work and meditation work, going outside and grounding with nature, all of that kind of stuff is right alongside with this ancient method that like, think of Native Americans doing like a buffalo dance or a spirit dance around a medicine wheel, where they're doing the same things. They're basically out in nature, connecting with the earth, looking up at the stars, and as a community or a village, all singing the same song or dancing to the same drum rhythm in order to try and connect with their reality and universe and to connect with the gods. And who knows if in ancient times back then, if they were, if the earth was in a different position or something like that, or reality was different because we didn't have all these distractions, and so things were amplified more, I don't know, and so they were in contact more directly. But I think we're moving back into that phase where people are starting to wake up in the midst of modern society and technology and everything. All it is connecting everyone again with each other at another level, and we're able to share all these different methods again, just like maybe they were able to do in ancient times. Like when you look at Egypt and the pyramids of Egypt and the obelisks, or even Teotihuacan in South America and stuff, when you zoom out from overhead, they all look like computer chips in a weird way when you think about it. And it's just like their ancient attempts to try and connect with reality, the electromagnetic field of reality. And it's all just frequency. It's all just harmony. And in the end, what's beautiful about it is we're talking that reality is just like music. It's song and dance, and it's meant to be enjoyed, right? And we forget that sometimes. We get scared by it. But yeah, I can go on and on. I'm really into it all.
This is so fascinating. So I have a lot of questions, but you're mentioning the circuitry a bunch of times. We've had Risberg talk about the simulation theory. I'm pretty much sure that's probably what's happening. I mean, I can't explain it any other way. Or what are your thoughts about that?
I just think that we naturally live in like a reality that we call, you know, we use physics, but it operates a lot on electromagnetics and magnetics. And what we call things like gravity really is a lot of electromagnetics and dielectric fields and attraction and repulsion and things like that. And we have a lot of terms and scientific dialogue wrapped around it. But in the end, what they're trying to do at CERN with the Hadron Collider right now, trying to look beyond the smallest particles that we know of and everything, what you get to at the end and what you can't escape is the fact that all of these particles and all of physical reality has to be witnessed by consciousness in order to be perceived. It has to go through the rods and cones and through the membranes of your body, and then ultimately is perceived by a witness of awareness and consciousness. And at the end, that's the bottom line, is the human soul and human consciousness. And everything else outside of that we perceive as physical reality is just a user interface that really is coming from that relationship from the subconscious and whatever's going on the outside that we perceive as physical reality. But what I'm saying is that we get locked in and convinced that it's all very physical and real, and we've lost touch with our connection with that and how connected we actually are with it. And now you guys are kind of playing with that in a fun way with the spoon bending. And I think we play with it in our own way when we go out, and we, even in our industry, we go out and do mining, and we turn different rocks and stones and minerals into different things, and we mix it around. And it's all kind of the same deal. We're playing with our reality and our environment, trying to shape it. And we don't realize that we can do that with the energy and the power of our own mind and consciousness and perceptions if we get on the same page.
Yeah, so we're here with Carl the Crusher. You can find out all of his links on his link tree. I'm also going to share that in the chat. So do you think that there's some sort of a probability? Okay, so this is my question. So you go into a sound bath, and I do like sync tuition. I get my left and right brain synced, and I feel that helps me. Like, okay, my question is like, so you do a lot of inner work on yourself. You get rid of all your, shadow work. It's a constant process, but you do that. Are you given more ability to create in this domain, this world, or is it based on probability? Like the probability of light ships showing up now is getting bigger because everyone's seeing them, or is it you're only limited by your mind? So if your mind is saying, well, I'm not sure the light ships are going to really land right now yet. I mean, so which of the three? Is it that you get more manifestation, or maybe there's another answer?
It's so hard to know. It's so tricky too, because it seems counterintuitive a lot of times, like playful or counterintuitive or tricksterish in a way, almost like there's a defense mechanisms or a safety net built into it, if that makes sense. And so there is kind of cheats around it or glimpses into how you can interact with reality and with the phenomena, is what we call it, the phenomena. But in the end, it's almost like there's sort of like a default safety net to it all, to where you can play with it a little bit, but it always clicks back into place or is able to hide itself or change form. But in a weird way, I like to, and this can be misleading, but when you compare it to like when you're dreaming at night, it's kind of counterintuitive in the same way. And I think that's also a glimpse. Like you don't really realize when you're asleep and dreaming that if you're in a house and you see that there's a doorway with the stairs over there, that entire environment is really made of your own psyche. It's your own subconscious projected outside yourself into a realm, into a room with a doorway and a staircase. And even if you think on the surface of your consciousness in your
oh wait,
forethought,
we just lost your sound for a second.
Oh, okay.
Real quick. Yeah, while he's fixing
Can
that,
you get me?
we still can't hear you. So, I'm glad that you mentioned dreams, because I was told recently, if you want to meet a real ET, like in the physical, they want to work with you. They want to know you can handle it in your dreams first.
Yeah. And, can anybody else hear me?
Now we can hear you. Okay. So keep talking about that. So you were saying that, yeah, like when you dream, that's your own little hologram in there could be interaction. So
yeah,
anyway.
So that's like a dream is like a non-physical realm or environment that's like a projection of your own subconscious outside yourself into like an interactive environment, where there's items in there. There's a room or a doorway or whatever. And you just make a lot of assumptions about the reality of it. But what's funny is it doesn't occur to you that even if your intention, this is where it gets counterintuitive and paradoxical with like manifestation, where I think a lot of people get it wrong, is like if you're in a dream and you start thinking, I really hope that a monster doesn't come up the stairs and chase me, almost before you can even finish the thought, like it knows, like the dream knows, right? And suddenly you're like already running away and you're like in it, because at the speed of thought, almost before your cognitive thinking and language can kind of process it, the dream has already manifested. And so imagine trying to shape that at a global scale with like billions of souls and billions of people all collectively, there's going to be sort of a default that is just slowly evolving and changing as everybody kind of awakens over time and starts to learn these things. And what's interesting is that a lot of the, like the petroglyphs and the carvings, if you come full circle, are sort of like glimpses or clues. Like everybody who looks at these old carvings or goes to the ancient pyramids or any of these old sites, it sort of awakens that in you. You see it and it sort of intuitively reminds you of some ancient connection, almost genetic connection to some other realm, and it helps you almost look forward. And that's why I think at these ancient sites you also see like UFO technology show up a lot of times. It's almost like these places where ancient people dwelt, the collective resonance was strong. You know, there was a lot of people for thousands of years in this particular valley, and then suddenly fast forward, and now I'm just sitting there alone and I'm meditating and trying to tap into that, and you can have powerful experiences and stuff. And so I don't know, I think it kind of even transcends our concept of time and reality and all of that. Like then you're talking about the Akashic records and what that means and everything. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, so you bring up interesting points that, like, yeah, so you're saying that if and I've heard that about churches too. They're like, yeah, so many people have prayed in this one spot, and they also put all the major big churches from, you know, in Europe and stuff on ley lines, on energy lines. They're not just randomly placed, you know, cathedrals, you know what I mean? They've already have huge electromagnetics. So, but what you're saying though is that you are sensing a warp in the electromagnetic fields in these highly you know, these ancient people were there, and then you're also saying that it's triggering memories in your Akashic records, because you're saying that you were probably one of those people. So before you answer, this is almost our last chance for everybody watching online to get into the Hangouts. You're going to get into the Zoom, lightnet.org/hangout. It's going to give you the Zoom so you can do the breakout groups and talk and mix and mingle with 4 other people tonight to really talk about all these topics. So you can expand more about that and how how it kind of activates you. They use that word activate. I'm like, what does that mean? And then I guess I kind of know.
It's kind of the theory of like ley lines, for example, that the earth and the universe naturally has amplified energetic lines or nodes or places that are occurring, and that people or maybe animals, wildlife, or whatever that were tapped into that energy would naturally gather at those locations. And then that sort of resonant interaction with the environment sort of imprints the environment. An interesting way to think of it is like, if you thought of like a computer drive or like a solid state drive, you know, we're talking a lot about circuit boards in the electromagnetic universe or whatever. But if you had one spot on the hard drive where you were writing and rewriting and deleting a lot of data, where a lot of programs were being added and deleted and a lot of games were being played there, then it would leave kind of a resonant frequency or energy in that particular spot on the hard drive. Just like if there was a favorite song on your vinyl record player, where you constantly are putting the needle would scratch and wear the record out over time and leave a residue. And so I wonder if going to these particular locations where the resonant energy of so many people living there over thousands of years, and that collective consciousness being so present there, that really, when you go there, you're the only one living on a particular linear timeline. The past and the future and the resonant energy of all that is still there. So when you walk into these amplified zones, I wonder if somehow through just opening up to it through meditation or being open-minded to it or going there with a group of people somehow taps into that, and then you get a glimpse. And we might perceive that as a paranormal encounter where you hear voices, see shadow figures, like a skinwalker or something like that, or maybe a glimpse into the future or another dimension where you see craft or UFOs or entities. And so I think it has to do with, yeah, like it creates maybe a crinkle in time, just like you would wear a groove on the record player or wear out a spot on the hard drive, where the collective consciousness has been very strong and existed for a long time. I think it could leave a residue.
Interesting. So one of the things reasons why we started this nonprofit LightNet is this really wanting to get out of the theory of all this and giving people direct ways to feel and experience this. So I'm going to put everybody in breakout groups right now. But my question to you is going to be, walk us through your technique of meditation. How do you do it? What do you do? Like what have been your personal experiences? We're also going to talk about Magic Mesa. So this is how it works for all of you who are new. Welcome to our Hangouts. We do these on the second Thursday of every month. We simulcast them. They're free, and we'd love to have you here, and we're glad that you're here tonight. So what we're going to do is we're going to put people in breakout groups, and you don't have to go into the breakout groups if you don't want to. So you just ignore you decline what's going to come up on the Zoom. And then we're going to move everyone around. So we have about 4 or 5 people in each group. You're going to assign a timekeeper. That person is going to keep it to around 4 to 5 minutes, depending on, you're going to be in there for 20 minutes, depending on how many people you have. And when someone has the talking stick, as Celestine Starr used to say, you let them speak. They can share, you guys can share your contact experience. You can share your thoughts about what we've been talking about so far. You can also ask for support in your life if you're having a hard time with anything. Those minutes are your minutes, and you can ask for feedback or not feedback from the other people in your group during your time. So here we go. Don't start bonding and talking with everyone for the first 30 seconds, because I'm going to be moving people in and out of rooms as we get things set up. So, okay. Here we go. And then go ahead, as I do this, go ahead and share your, and by the way, if you are going to breakout groups, don't worry, because this is all recorded. You can go to Carl's channel or LightNet channel or wherever and get the archives. So here we go. So talk about your personal experiences and how you actually go through your meditations. What are your techniques, right?
So it's kind of evolved over time, and I follow my intuition a lot depending on where I'm at. So if I'm and where I'm going into, if I'm going into what's considered like a haunted house or like a paranormal second. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I think it pulled me into a room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I pulled you back.
That's okay. Got me.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically what I'll do is I try to go to, well, I'll prepare myself at home first, so I make sure that I'm like ready to go. I'm not living with any kind of like personal turmoil going on in my life or anything like that. So I'll make sure that I'm feeling nice and clear in my consciousness and like my intentions are well. Because I feel like if I'm going to go into a place where there's an amplified response to those subconscious intentions and fears or problems, then I don't want to go into an amplified place if I'm experiencing a lot of depression or negativity, if I'm not feeling good about what I'm doing and what's going on or why I'm there or whatever. So I prepare myself that way, first of all, and make sure everything feels right. I feel good. And I kind of feel like I really want to go to this particular spot. I'm feeling really curious, almost like passionate about it or inspired to go there. And then when I get there, I continue to follow my intuition, almost like I'm listening to my inner compass a little bit about where to go. And I'll go find like the known petroglyphs or ancient dwelling sites that are there in the area. And then I try to follow my intuition beyond that. And a lot of times that leads to me sitting down in a particular spot, overlooking a view, and then I'll start to meditate. And then from there, it depends on how much like preparation I've done leading up to it. A lot of times I'll just start meditating, and that starts with like trying to just visualize the past or visualize like what was going on here. And I don't try to overlay any kind of assumptions. I almost go into a mindset like you would if you're doing remote viewing. If anybody's familiar with remote viewing, there's an opening of your aperture that has to occur. And if you have assumptions that are jumping in there, they call that analytical overlay, to where like a flash might come into your mind, like an image of like a waterfall or something like that. And in your mind, you think, oh, there must be a waterfall somewhere nearby. And so you jump to all these conclusions that might not necessarily be true. So you have to just stay open-minded and clear to kind of like non-physical impressions or little visualizations or epiphanies that come to mind and stuff while I'm sitting there. And a lot of times that leads to me sort of in a flow state where I'm hiking around or walking along, and then I'll make a discovery where I'll find like a whole nother set of petroglyphs I didn't know, or something interesting, or arrowheads or ancient pottery, different stuff. And so I follow that along. And sometimes I'll sit in a spot and get meditating. And next thing I know, the sun's gone down. There's been like 4 hours of missing time. I'm freezing. I didn't even realize, or I'm like sweating to death and didn't realize. And I'll have like a whole kind of a visionary experience that's very Native American themed or something. And then I come home and try to piece it together and read books and study online to make sense of what just happened and what I saw. And I go back and keep exploring it. And sometimes I'll get really sick. I'll go into a slot canyon and do the same thing. And by the time I've hiked back to my truck, I'm like throwing up and nauseous and very dizzy. And I have to do a bunch of cleansing work to try and get myself back on track. Sometimes it takes like 2-3 days, but it's just going with experience. I'll do everything from like play audio music and Native American stuff out over a speaker. I don't want to try and do it myself because I wasn't raised in the culture to be able to try and mimic it or copy it. So I'll play music or sound through a speaker to try and connect with the environment. I'll take sound bowls and do my own like Buddhist meditation sound bath in the area, a lot of different stuff. So it just kind of depends. And then I'll also bring out, scientific equipment. If things start to occur, then I try to capture it on night vision with a tri-field meter, a REM pod, or with other type of gear. I even have a radiation detector. So then I try to narrow down and see if I can actually pinpoint it on a physical, repeatable something that I could show like a doctor or a skeptic or something like that I could actually capture data off of and try to match it to. And that's where it gets really interesting, is when you actually start to capture things.
Can you talk a little bit about the tools that you're using? So tell people that are from scratch, like the middle one I didn't recognize what you were saying. So tell them about that. We're going to also talk about dimensions after that, but talk about what you think you're getting and what you're measuring, and maybe mention some of the names of the gear too, because we'd like to know.
Yeah, it's kind of this theory that like we can only perceive a narrow bandwidth of what reality actually is. We only see so many colors of the rainbow. We can only hear so far into the audible spectrum, but really all of reality, from the visual to audio, even to the physical senses, are all a frequency or a bandwidth. And so we try to use equipment in order to see beyond or hear beyond or sense beyond our physical limitations, try to peer into the blind spots or listen into the shadows or whatever. And so the equipment that I have is everything from night vision equipment, like full spectrum night vision cameras that will film and record, to audio recorders and equipment. I have spirit boxes, the ones that will loop through FM or AM radio stations, and you can try to interact through different frequencies that way. The REM pod is basically a temperature anomaly sensing device. You lift the antenna up, and if a sudden shift in temperature or something approaches it from one direction or other, it will light up and make a noise. So you can actually ask questions and interact with things sometimes, like touch that antenna 3 times for no and once for yes or whatever. And you can sometimes ask questions and get interactions. I have a tri-field meter, and that's like a sensor that detects electromagnetic fields and radio frequencies and magnetic fields. It's kind of finicky. And then I also have a radiation sensor that's just straight up detects radiation levels as you're walking through an area. So if you hit like a uranium deposit or some kind of anomalous radiation, or if you're seeing a UFO and want to know if it's safe to walk up to, whatever, I have all of that as well. And then, I have friends that have expanded equipment too, everything from dowsing rods all the way up to ground penetrating radar and drones and thermal gear, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, everything from military grade equipment all the way down to just pseudoscience, paranormal, ghost hunting equipment, and you name it. I even have goggles that are those dicyanin goggles that they make where you're supposed to put them on and it makes you see a certain filtered light spectrum to where you can see shadow figures and stuff. I haven't really seen anything too interesting off of it other than little like light energies moving around, but other than that, not too much. But yeah, it's just cool to get a lot of different variety. So you can, if you find something interesting or an interesting location, then you have a lot of different ways to check it.
Yeah, can you talk about your research with James and Christopher, and also talk about, I guess I just want to follow up on the tri-field meter, because we've been working with these two, and it's like, are you noticing it's electromagnetic or radio frequency, or what do you think that is? And so, yeah, talk a little bit about what you guys are working on. And
yeah, that's what I'm still trying to figure out is exactly what it is, because sometimes it's like a pulsing RF signal that I'm getting off of certain glyphs, and other times it's like a magnetic one, but then I can't get metal detectors or anything else to pick up on it. So it's still kind of anomalous. I'm really not sure exactly what it is. So right now I'm still trying to expand my equipment and bring friends to certain locations to check on things, which is where like James and Chris comes in. So Chris Bartel, he worked during the Bigelow era at Skinwalker Ranch for several years there, for I think 8 years as the security guard there. And so he has a ton of experience in the field. And before that, he worked at and around Area 51 and Nellis Air Force Base. His resume of experience with the paranormal, secret government technology and programs, all this kind of stuff, and even Native American things at like the highest level, he's been really involved in. So he's kind of like, he makes me feel really safe. He's a big, tough dude. So when we get walking around, he has all that military experience and everything. So we feel brave together going into these spooky spots sometimes. And then James, he has done a huge amount of research about everything from the oral history of giants to the petroglyphs to little people to UFOs, you name it, to buried treasure. His wealth of knowledge of information is huge. And then he matches that. He's a former police officer and currently a school teacher as well. But he has a lot of technical experience with ground penetrating radar. He can find if there's caves, cavities, gold deposits, minerals. Like we could find an abandoned mine shaft and without even going underground, map out exactly where the tunnels go and how deep, what could be under there and everything, and come up with a game plan before we even go underground. So it's really fun when we get together. We can go up to these locations and really debunk a lot of stuff and see where stuff really is and where it isn't, and then actually find a lot of things.
yeah, so it looks like James is actually on the call. I don't know, James, if you want to step in and talk about a little bit about what you three are up to and what you guys are researching. But we're really grateful, because that's the thing. Just like you were talking about, Carl, it's like, so now we've got all this cheap technology that you and I can buy on Amazon that's measuring something that our body might not pick up on. Our body is still the highest measurement device that we have so far. You got hands-on healing, you've got channeling, you got all this other stuff. But for the skeptics, and then just for me, I just like to, I don't know, it's just fun. James has given, he's told me a lot of different stuff to get with this EMF reader, and, I'm always texting him like, what's going on? This is like spiky, it's just like, it's fun. It's fun. And we're in that age right now. It's the age of Aquarius, meaning like all of the airwaves, everything that we can't see is going to be understood more.
Right.
So I want to ask you, what is your sense of what's going on with dimensions? Like, what is that? How does that work exactly?
Again, I think it's like we're talking about frequencies again. When we think of dimensions, it's kind of like, if you're standing at a big crystal and from one perspective, you're going to see the prism from one way. And if you stand over here, you're going to see it a different way. And I think our current reality, our default reality that we're in is of a certain harmony, a certain frequency. There is a particular song that is playing, but you can sort of hijack off of the default antenna, whatever, we're on a particular planet that's locked in to a certain frequency, and there's a certain song or movie playing right now, our reality, our three-dimensional reality. But when you open up your aperture, when you go into maybe altered states of consciousness, or you go into these other locations that sometimes evoke altered states of consciousness, you walk up and you see the petroglyphs, and it turns your brain off. It like puts you in a state of wonderment and awe for a moment and evokes these types of spiritual experiences. And so I think that's sort of what's happening as we escape that normal signal that we're normally trapped in. Most people never do. You wake up in the morning, and right from the get-go, your mind starts thinking, oh, I don't want to go to work, and da-da-da. And there's this whole conversation that kicks in, and you're already on your radio station, your signal of reality. And that's all you know. And a lot of people never get off that signal ever. They never explore any other dimensions. They never try to listen or see into any other frequency. And so it's all about kind of opening your mind to that. And there's different systems and programs in order to do that. You can approach it through ancient methodologies. They would use sound and music and chanting or incense and things to try and evoke those altered states of consciousness. Other people would use, psychedelics or herbal medicines in order to like hijack and do that too. There's all sorts of different ways to do it. And so I think that's kind of ultimately what we're talking about, is we're realizing what our relationship is with reality itself and how we actually are interacting with it on the fly and don't realize it. Did I answer your question? I feel like I...
Yeah. And I would just follow up by saying, like, do you think, so we were talking about the elephant in the room, which is that consciousness is more fundamental than matter. And that's what, we have an amazing interview with Dean Radin, who's did 5,000, collected the 5,000 studies. It's like, hey, wait a minute, this is not what we thought it was. But then my question is to you, is that if you and I right now are creating our reality, the good and the bad and the ugly, right? All the stuff we wanted and didn't want, and all the lessons, all the learning. Is there something above this base reality? So when we go and astral travel, is that also part of my mind? Or am I actually breaking into another reality, a different base reality? And they're saying, hey, Zenka, you made it out. How's it going? Or like same thing with the dream. Like when you have those rehash dreams, but so where is base reality? Is it all part of one thing, or are we communicating with something beyond us?
I think it's layers of that. I think it's inseparably kind of both in a paradox, because the other dimensions can't be perceived without the mind or awareness, your awareness being there and going and being present. And so without your presence and the mind being there, it's kind of like that old haiku of like, if a tree falls in the woods and there's nobody there to hear it, does it make a sound? If there's nobody there to hear it, not really. It doesn't really exist, without consciousness there to perceive it in a way. And so these other realities, these other dimensions of reality, or even the past or the future, maybe the idea is that they can be perceived or glimpsed into or viewed almost like searching on Google, or like you would search on a hard drive. So when you're astral projecting or remote viewing, it's kind of like you're picking that needle up off of the record player and touching it down somewhere else on the hard drive or on the timeline and picking up a different signal. And that might not even be on the same three-dimensional plane or the same timeline. It could be in the past, the future, a different parallel frequency or signal that could be very foreign or alien, which I think a lot of what people experience with like psychedelics and stuff probably is this like hijacked signal that goes into the body biologically and changes your tuning. And suddenly your antenna's picking up, instead of picking up radio signal 103.3, you're jumped over to 98.5, and you're getting a different signal altogether, visually and auditory. Your consciousness is suddenly there. So is it a real dimension? I don't know. Define real. It depends on if you believe or are of the mindset that non-physical realities are still realities. Does it have to be a physical reality in order to exist? I don't know. Is a dream real? Did it really happen? I don't know. It's where do you split hairs on what's real and what's not? Because in the end, it all has to rest on the seat of consciousness and be part of that, which is just the energy of awareness in the end.
I'm so glad we're doing this interview. If you want to find out more about Carl's work, here's his link tree here, which has everything. You're such a good YouTube storyteller, but it's like an adventure series. So you don't really get this depth that we're having today about, you're a highly, highly advanced consciousness. Like, I don't meet that many people that are willing to accept the entire story, and not pick and choose on how this works. So it's really incredible to see how clear you are on the complexities and the poetry, the paradoxes of this reality. So now I want to ask you, so if you do have a magic wand, and you do have a magic wand because you're so advanced, what do you want to happen in the next 5 years for all of us? Like, what would you love to create? What would you love to see happen in the next 5 to 10 years? And what is happening right now?
I think just the awareness of it is really important to me. I think, honestly, when I do meditations, when I feel like I have kind of an epiphany or a download, or I understand like what my purpose is, a lot of times what I feel like is I am like supposed to take these really complicated, dynamic philosophical concepts and the way that reality is, and help put it into words in a way that's easy for people to understand and to apply to themselves. And that's why I use like a lot of metaphors and things, because imagine when if you're in a dream and suddenly you become aware that you're dreaming and you're now lucid and still dreaming. Initially, that can be very dangerous because every single thought becomes reactive and responsive. And so initially, over the next 5 years, my hope and dream would be that as everybody awakens to who they really are, their own actual interdimensional potential that they already have as human beings, that you don't have to stay in this default rut, codependent upon systems and societies and beliefs or whatever that keep you like a rat in the maze, that you can go within yourself and take control of your own reality from within. But initially, that's going to involve facing a lot of those shadows. It's going to involve looking in the mirror and being brutally honest with yourself. Because like we said, if you're going into an amplified realm or a zone that's going to pick up your subconscious fears and beliefs or tendencies and put them in front of you or amplify them and manifest them into reality, you better clean up your messes. You better go in and do the spiritual work. And so there's a lot of these safety nets in place. So I would hope that over the next 5 years that people, as they awaken into this and kind of come out of the cocoon to what reality is in their own involvement and interaction with it, as we do that together, that's done in like a loving and non-judgmental and a safe way. Because if ego's involved, it's going to go very bad. It would go very bad.
Yeah. So, I had like the worst dark night of the soul ever.
Oh, me too.
Do you have any advice for people going through that harder stage where, I mean, it's always happening, but
you have to surrender and not judge it, because what you're going through, it feels like a torture rack. It feels like everything that you love is getting ripped away. It feels like a tragedy. It does feel like you're drowning and you can't survive. But in the drowning, as you're getting battered in the deep ocean, what you find is that you grow gills, and that you learn to breathe down there, and you learn to swim, and you become resilient, and your spiritual evolution expands from there. And so all that's happening is not a punishment, it's a refinement, and it's bringing you up to the truth. And so all of that you experience is just your own shadows, lies, and things that you've been hiding that you have to face and resolve and get on the path of your true perfect purpose. And if you accept that and to surrender to it, then you realize that the universe and the fates actually are in your favor and have your best interest in mind. And all of your resistance is like a little child kicking and screaming because they don't realize they're being taken to Disneyland. They don't realize it. They just think they're going to the dentist. They don't understand. So you have to accept that all the hard things you're going through are not a punishment. It's the path to the top,
Wow, that was so beautiful. We're gonna have to get that transcribed, because that was beautiful. You just lived up to your mission, and you do every day of your life, but you're explaining these things so clearly for us all to understand. And I definitely can say that I came to that conclusion that the world was in my favor, but I was too immature, like you said, to realize I was being taken to Disneyland.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I believe that everything, all the experiences, even the really hard ones, were from a loving perspective.
Yeah.
It was all in love. And that's when I had my near-death experience, it was like that. It was like, well, it was all in love. Nobody was against you. We were just trying to help you the whole time,
Yeah.
So wow. So we're going to bring people back from the breakout rooms in 2 minutes, and we're also going to open it up to all you guys to ask questions. Well, I'll explain it when we bring them back. So for my final question, I wanted to ask you kind of slipped in this thing, multidimensional beings that we are. And these are like these words that get thrown around right now. In what does that mean? Like, who is your higher self?
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah. So we can even play with that levels of awareness, just like you would with the meditation. Like we have right now, everybody can really hyper focus in just on the sound of my voice and nothing else. But if you wanted to, you could shift the dimension of your awareness over to the visual and just kind of like notice all of the color of blue in the room, nothing but the color and the shades of blue around you in the room, and really focus on that. And then you can shift your awareness into just like thinking about, yesterday, try to remember the past and yesterday, and then when you start visualizing or trying to imagine like what you're going to do tomorrow, what do you want to make for breakfast tomorrow? You start to realize that even within your own mind and in your awareness, it's like you're constantly pointing your director in a multitude of dimensions and different awarenesses, from sounds to smells to thoughts to language to awareness. And a lot of times most people don't even go inward and start to pay attention to all of that. But your human soul is like a huge onion of different feelings, emotions, biology, consciousness, and then language, and then society and an external environment all on top of that. And so when I say that we're multi-dimensional beings already, just pay attention when you go to sleep at night, how much control you really have. Like as you start to fall asleep, as you're thinking your thoughts, your daytime thoughts that you think you're in charge of drift into daydreaming and imagining, and then that drifts into dreaming at night and becomes a whole dream that you may or may not even remember. And so I'm just saying, where you go in those spaces and where your consciousness goes is totally multidimensional. You're going into different internal and psychic realms within your own thoughts and imagination and awareness just constantly, and you just don't pay attention. And so once you grab the reins of that and start to harness it, try to focus it and work on it, almost like you're getting into martial arts or karate and you want to get a black belt, then you can really start to do something with your own mind and your awareness and your potential. And you realize, you know, things like astral projection, spoon bending, manifestation, quantum entanglement, all this stuff suddenly doesn't seem so weird. You start to experience those synchronicities in your life.
Yeah, that's so cool. I never really thought about it like that. So yeah, for those of you that are just joining us back after the breakout groups, Carl, you have to watch the recording because he drops some mad wisdom. And we've got a comment here. It's like, I'm here for Carl. He's crushing it. You definitely are crushing it. It's very cool. So, and he was talking about how, you know, we really are multidimensional just within our thoughts and when we dream and when we think about the past and we think about the future and all these things. So it's so cool. And I'm excited to see how your lucid living continues in your life. So if you're watching the live broadcast and you want to come and ask Carl a question, we've gotten some on the past about gravity and all this crazy stuff. So this is how you get in. So lightnet.org/hangout is how you get in. And I also want to remind you that in 2 weeks, we're going to be getting together to do this pause and expand workshop using the science of sounds. They're going to really show you how to get into your intuition. And you can find this out at lightnet.org. $11 gets you in, or $25 off using the code EXPAND when you do a yearly. Under $100, and you're going to get all these archives we were talking about Dean Radin, Adam Curry. You get spoon bending parties as well. There's Carl. We also have Celestine.
That picture you picked of me. I
know. It's like the softer side. So, yeah. So in Celestine Star, I just wanted to shout out to her. She passed, and very recently in the last week, and we just sent her so much love. She was such a pioneer. We did an amazing interview with her, and we know that you're here with us, Celestine. She organized a galactic council. She had people from, you know, creating these circles to make interdimensional contact together in groups. And it was just really great. Joy's talking about the Integratron, which also is on a ley line and things like that. So got some incredible people, Dwayne. So that's that. Now, if you guys want to, if you go down to the reactions, you can see in the Zoom in the right-hand side, like a little hand raising thing. And that's what you're going to do to jump in and ask Carl a question right now. So does anyone have a question? And while we're waiting for people to come through, you can also, if you don't want to raise your hand and be on camera, you can type it in. We had some people asking about gravity.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that? I don't know where the question.
They probably want me just to elaborate a little bit, because I mentioned like gravity is really just like a magnetic dielectric phenomena. Yeah, like it's kind of just like realizing that like everything in your room is in your room also because of the empty space there, right? And so you have the actual objects in the room, but then you have the space in which the room can have objects to exist. And so gravity is kind of like perceiving the wake off the back of a boat and then being like, hey, that's a thing. It's not really the thing. It's sort of the evidence of a thing, if that makes sense. So gravity is sort of the evidence of manifestation coalescing and existing. And gravity is just sort of that interaction it's like the wake in between manifestation and the emptiness and the space in which it's created. And so kind of holds everything together. I don't know. It's cool. But I don't know. I think it's different than the way current science teaches it altogether.
Yeah. So you have brought some incredible kids into the world. Do you think that they were somehow born differently? Like, are they seeding kind of new genetics? I mean, or are they just a result of the evolution that we've already created? Like, they seem to have their heads on straight in terms of like, money doesn't really move them. They want purpose, and you know what I mean? They want to take care of the planet more than we ever did. And like, what's your take on childhood and the new generations that are coming up?
Yeah, it's just kind of like that same, like what we inherit and we pass on is just part of that default collective. And so like what's difficult, the question is like, did I as a father, did I kind of wake up and understand my relationship with reality and others around me and my own responsibility with my own internal subconscious and my mental health and everything within that at a time as a parent where I was able to teach those things and convey it to my children and give them the tools so that as they grow up, they can take care of themselves. They can sit and meditate. They can be mindful of their own thoughts and emotions and manage that and understand that, you know, other people are really kind of a reflection of themselves in a way and part of the experience in a way. And like, so I don't know if I even figured it out. I wish I knew it my whole life too. And I had to kind of figure it all out raw, I feel like, but I also at the same time inherited a lot of things too, and was brought up with something. So I don't know. That's a really good question. I think there's some of it that's nature and some of it that is nurture. I think some people are just more attuned, and then the environment that they're in is very good at promoting the growth and the fostering people to feel safe so that they can explore these aspects of themselves instead of feeling like they're just shoved into a system.
Yeah. We've got a question here from Julia.
It's not a big question, except for that I came in that way and I'm 77 years old. So I think there was a lot of us around who are very aware, who have always been very aware. I told my parents this was my lifetime and when I'm 3 years old. And they said, yes, you're right, you are. And they let me grow myself up. They were good parents, but they weren't of the same venue as I was.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm a walk-in. I don't see ETs. I don't do that. I'm just aware.
Yeah.
There was another comment I was going to make, but I got sidetracked. But I believe I'm a Lemurian or Atlantean soul come in for this time. And but I don't do anything outstanding. I am not I'm intuitive. I have the feelings, but I don't use them in my daily life. But there's just so many of us around, and we're just there to support. And we don't want the attention. We just want to be there to help everyone else. So, and Carl, you're a great soul, and so are you, Zenka. I met you on Saturday Night Alive, and thought it was Mark Sims, and think you guys are doing wonderful jobs, and I'm glad you're here bringing it all out.
Thank you,
Thank you
so much.
Thank you so much, Julia. Yeah, I mean, we look to you because you guys, you really were the pioneer that, I mean, now it's like not a big deal to talk about all this stuff, but you know, you were part of what I call the icebreakers. So it's like literally I think of you guys as these ships that are like, okay, we're gonna go through this, you know what I mean? And we're gonna just make it easier for everyone that comes behind us. So thank you so much. Okay, great. We have a question from Rob here. Welcome, Rob. We love Rob.
Hey, Zenka, I just wanted to say hello. Hello. I'm glad you're still above ground. It makes the planet worth living on. You know what I mean? And I appreciate you too, man. You got some really good chops. I'm really interested though in signs and semiotics, symbology, all of this stuff. And I know a little bit about signs. Signs are very important. We use them every day, all day. They're in everything. Reiki is a really good example on a positive use for symbols and signs. We can transmit healing energy at a distance this way. And there are lots of good symbols. I know Zenka was mentioning that you had some symbols that you can use to contact extraterrestrials. Could you share those symbols with us, do you think?
I don't know if I necessarily have specific symbols. I'm still in the very kind of exploratory phase of all of it, of just kind of realizing along with everybody else that there is maybe something to that. I think what I'm doing is going and just trying to see which of the ancient symbols am I finding consistently in multiple locations, and then which of these repeated symbols, some of them separated over hundreds of miles, which of them seem to consistently give off like a frequency or an energy that I can pick up. And then what occurs when I sit there or meditate? Is it a positive or negative experience or whatever? And I have my own personal experiences with that. As far as the symbols themselves, it all comes down to a personal thing, honestly. For me, a lot of it, and this goes back to Zenka's question, the idea of the ancestry. For some reason, for me, when my ancestry is Native American and Norwegian, is an interesting mix of Viking and Muskogee Indian. And so a lot of times I will visualize those things and draw upon that. And my arm's completely tattooed with the meaning and everything. I carry it with me because there's something to that, tapping into my ancestry and something that awakens the right sort of intention and mindset and purpose within myself. And I think that's more important than what the symbols actually do. I don't know if it necessarily even matters if it was a particular secret pattern, because then you can have an organization that's like, hey, I have this glyph over here that has magical power and I'm keeping it for myself. I don't think that's what it is. I think if you went and found that book and opened it, what you would find is just a mirror. And you would realize that those symbols, whether it be a glyph of a maze, a spiral, a Star of David, a cross of Christianity, or whatever it is, if it evokes the right state of consciousness and spirituality within yourself, then it allows you to change your own frequency and get control of your own dial and start to tune it yourself rather than just accept the signal that you're on. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question there, sir?
Yeah, it does kind of. It's kind of like walking a maze or something. You follow the maze and it tunes your body and your psyche, your consciousness to a certain pattern. And
Yeah.
when you come out, it changes you in different ways. Especially,
yeah, it's kind of like the same thing as like how if I say that if you walk up to an intersection and you see the color red, it evokes a different response than if you see the color green at an intersection. One means stop and one means go. And we kind of know that meaning. It's like accepted in our society. But I think there's subconscious things in our environment all around us that actually affect us and change us in that way. And when you start to pay attention to that or take control of it and harness it and experiment with it a little bit, you might realize your connection with reality is more in touch than you thought. It might even be as simple as just while you're meditating, have an art book and some crayons there and draw symbolically or kind of intuitively, like just impressionistically, what like your thoughts are, desire is, or what kind of answers that you're seeking. and then go outside and walk with that. And it's about what it does to you and what it does to your consciousness and how it points you. And that's where the contact really occurs, is through that method, whether it's an actual symbol, a glyph, or a sound or frequency that does it. I think that's at the edge of research that's going on, from everywhere to Skinwalker Ranch to what I'm doing. Is there an actual like 1.6 gigahertz frequency and a right sound and a mindset and method? We don't quite know the formula yet, but we know that there is definitely something to it. And the more people are aware of it and start to look into it unafraid, the more we'll learn and the more we can start to explore it and figure it out.
So we've got 10 more minutes left and we have 2 more questions, and we'd like to give you a final word too. And the 2 questions we have left are really beautiful. So here's the first one. We at LightNet are, one of our first curiosity labs for this citizen science open database is making contact. And we're doing this huge experiment right now with 42 people have gone in, remote viewing, channeling, radios, and dreams. And we're all going to, do contact in 8 weeks. And they've got a question from Arizona that came in this beautiful. It says, do you think that everyone that wishes to have contact with ETs can, or is there a permission that's happening on the other side? Do they also have to agree? Like, hey, this person wants to make contact. Do they also agree? Or is it just that you wish and it happens? And if they do agree, what are the characteristics do you feel that they're looking for? Or what are they selecting for?
Yeah, it's kind of a playful thing that, to me, the way that I explore it, again, if I compare it to a dream, if I want to communicate to a character that I see across the street when I'm dreaming, how do I make contact? If not through the dream externally by saying, hey, what's your name? But also I have to become lucid within myself and know that what's going on within the dream is very closely interconnected with my own subconscious. And so there's tricks to this that I've found that have helped me a lot. And this will be something that maybe will help everybody in your group too, hopefully, is that we're taught in society a lot of things, and this is might be disruptive to some people, but things like, for example, like hope. We're taught to hope for things, hope for a better future, hope for a better tomorrow. But really, when you sit and think about it, if you're meditating with a feeling of hoping, that's the same energy as lacking and not having and needing, which is also a negative energy that's kind of cloaked and counterfeit with hope. This idea of like, I really want this, which is kind of an ego, like I need, I want. And so you have to be careful if you're out there trying to make contact and you're thinking, I really want to see a UFO, or I want to make contact with another entity or being. It's not like that. It's more about expressing and opening a heart and a mindfulness of good intentions and attitude and open-mindedness to receive information or knowledge, or to make contact without prejudice, to where even if something appears that's terrifying, you're not going to be afraid, all of that kind of stuff. So I think it's a misunderstanding a lot of times, where when we get out there, you really want something, and wanting comes from an energy of lacking and needing, which can be a negative relationship. So go out there not expecting or needing anything, but just with like a gratitude and an openness, and you might have better results. It's different when you go out, like if you're going bird watching and you go out there really aggressively, like, hey, where's all the birds? I want to see birds. You're going to see them, but you're not going to get the results that you're looking for, as if you sit quietly and make contact in the way that they're accustomed to.
Cool. Probably the last question we'll take is from Vesuvian, and she's asking, what are your thoughts about star language, light language symbols as being shared on by channelers, starseeds, and so on? Have you seen any patterns among them and other ancient symbols? And I just want to pause really quick to tell you that we're very proud if you go to the main LightNet page, we have this, we're starting the living library, the tree of knowledge. And if you hit explore, you can go into this thing. And we just started, so this is kind of a free for all knowledge share between all of us. And someone just uploaded the other day, Nadi Hana, who's a beloved member of our community. She uploaded all these things, and it's interesting to see how you feel when you see them.
Yes.
But this is available to you guys to check out. But yeah, so what are your thoughts on light language and symbols and all that?
100%. Yeah, it's totally a part of it. Same with like song and music and emotions and all of that. It's like a chemistry and alchemy and internal magic that we're doing. And you can write your own music and sit there and take control of the symphony a little bit and see how the music goes and dance along. Or you can just sit there and feel traumatized by all the noise, you know what I mean? So yeah, all those pictures and everything, artistic creation, especially like abstract artistic creation, music and dance, is at the rawest form of taking that non-physical dimensions of your soul and consciousness and converting it into our physical dimension of reality so that you can share it with other people. So I think exactly a beautiful way. That's exactly how ancient people were doing it artistically, taking the experiences that they were having and conveying them to us so that when you see it, you experiencing it as well. And that's what all this stuff does. There's a reason why when you see a work of art or a symbol or something, it evokes a response, an emotion, a memory, or whatever. It changes your own internal alchemy and your makeup and how you're thinking and feeling and seeing reality as a whole. And so the more that we do that creatively and positively and share that, the better.
Yeah, someone gave me a sigil for luck, and they said, I swear this will work. And they said, just, because I was going to raise money for the nonprofit, they like, just look at this and say, I am lucky, oh so lucky every day. And I was like, so I did it for like maybe 3 weeks. And then all of a sudden I started getting people say, wow, Zenka, you're so lucky. And then I would see rabbits and I would look them up and it was the sign, it was lucky. And I was like, wow, this is like some ancient symbol,
Yeah.
So why don't you guys all take it upon yourself to experiment with something, whether you draw it yourself this week or whether you pull something ancient or Hebrew or something like that, right? And just see if it works. So if you want to find more about Carl, you can go to his link tree here, and he's got a great YouTube channel. He's got a Patreon that supports buying these electromagnetic gear and everything like that. So I really encourage you to support his work. And you're an incredible person. And thanks for sharing all your wisdom. So I'll leave you the final word. Is there anything you want to say to the world right now? From your end.
I think just stay curious. I think everybody has an intuitive internal seeker or a curiosity that kind of guides them. You don't have to take advice from it or listen or whatever, but if you stay curious and all that, it's usually going to guide you to places that are going to help you progress or whatever. And even though things might be difficult at first, it is part of that growth and coming out of a shell. And so just that, I would just say, just check it out. And whether you're interested in the ancient history, the mysteries, if you're more interested in the paranormal or UFOs, in the end, all of it has to be witnessed by your awareness and your consciousness. And so my, I guess, final words is to make sure that is smooth and in harmony so that anything that happens, you feel like you're experiencing with clarity and truth.
Awesome. Well, have a great night tonight, Carl. You had some electricity problems earlier, so I'm glad you could join us. It's been a really special night, and we thank you so much for your time.
It was a real pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on, everybody. I appreciate it. And the great questions too. It was awesome.
Yeah. Okay, guys, see you in 2 weeks. Bye.